So you did have some, and it's hard for us to say it on this podcast since I've never had it, the dreaded job in my whole life. We kind of throw up in our mouth when we mention that term, but it's kind of a thing that we do need to talk about. So you had some jobs then before you became this big real estate guy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Like what?
Well, I mean, one of the first jobs that I ever got on the phone was actually in a collection agency. And needless to say, it was a very tough job because I didn't have any experience, but I needed to pay the bills. And so I got a chance of learning how to collect and how to resolve issues with people that didn't want to pay those bills. They didn't feel like they owed those bills. Funny enough, through that time, I learned how to type without looking. So I really developed some skills in this
Uh-huh.
job. But more than anything, what I learned in that, even in that little, what seemed to be insignificant job, was that if you were a good steward of your time and of your talents, you could ultimately get elevated. And what I learned is that even though this job was for most people insignificant, I really wasn't making a lot of money, I got really good at it. And what was really interesting is because I performed and I treated it like it was my business, within a year and a half of being there, I was actually introduced through the main manager with a gentleman that was running the Spanish line of business for Capital One. And they ultimately offered me a job, paying me double what I was making at the time, paying me compensation for bonuses. And so I learned very quickly, even though it was a very tiny move, I learned even during those times that even when you work for somebody else, if you will treat it like your business and you are a good steward of those times and resources, that it will always open up more opportunities. And so that's really where I transitioned to Capital One. And it was there that I continued to develop, and I got this love when I realized that they were the bank and they were making all this money. I remember telling myself, one day I'm going to own a bank. And little did I know that I'd be speaking that prophetically into my life. And now we're a private lending company. So we are lenders and we lend money to other people. So
Well,
it's really
you
cool.
should have named it Rick's Bank. That's a good name for a bank. Yeah. Now, wasn't it? Now I know you're very faith-based. I'm not sure when you really took to that, but wasn't it kind of hard because weren't some of the people that you're going after in the collection agency really down on their luck, not just trying to hide from you?
That's a great comment. At that moment, I didn't really have a relationship with God, if you
Mm-hmm.
will. It was still pretty much, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty skeptical for a very long time. I had to have a real, what I call quote unquote God experience to really kind of humble me. But during that time while I was there, I think that was the beginning, the inner pinnings, if you will, of learning how to truly negotiate. And the reason why I say that is because here I am talking to somebody, like you said, who's down on their luck. Some people, of course, they knew what they were dealing with and they were just trying to
Mm-hmm.
find a way not to pay. But there were people that were struggling with real life circumstances. And so there's a balance when you're negotiating with somebody so that you can try to create a win that allows them the ability to pay their bill, but also a win that makes sure that they're able to still be able to survive and take care of their current obligations.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was definitely a lot of gray areas and a lot of moments where, I learned failing forward, if you will, during a lot of those different interviews with people that needed help. And so a lot of discernment also of knowing who's talking, out of where and who's actually telling the truth. And so that was definitely something that was cultivated through that struggle.
Now, I remember. Now we talked before we started here a little bit about giving before you get, and a lot of the folks listeners know my story of helping my landlord when I was in college, and then he came and offered me a no money down deal to take over a hotel when he retired. So tell us about your the time that you gave before you got.
Yeah, to be honest, after Capital One, that's when I had this incredible God experience. I surrendered to God. I started going into the actual mission field. But here's what I learned. Number one, I learned that it is so much more fulfilling to give back and help other people without even expectations. And that was something that I got addicted to, is just the feeling of purpose of making a difference in the lives of somebody. But I also learned while I was in ministry at that short period of time that that type of ministry didn't allow me or afford me the ability to do more. So if I was going to make a bigger impact, I had to find a different career to pay the bills, right? And so that's really where I began my journey to real estate. I started doing some research, and I realized that the wealthiest people in the world, they all boasted real estate in their net worth. It didn't matter what industry. What mattered is that all of them had real estate. That was one of the common denominators. So being a young kid with zero experience, I sought out to actually